My name is Claire Donovan, and at 36 years old, I thought I had already endured the worst life could throw at me. I had buried my husband 5 years ago, built a life from the ashes for myself and my son Ethan, and somehow kept our small architectural design firm alive through more sleepless nights than I can count. But nothing, not grief, not the crushing loneliness of single motherhood, not the weight of keeping a business afloat, could have prepared me for the moment my sister decided to rewrite my son's life in front of an entire backyard full of people. It was 3 days after my mother's funeral. I hadn't wanted to go anywhere, let alone to my nephew Caleb's 6th birthday party. My head still throbbed from crying, and every corner of my house smelled faintly of the lilies from the memorial service. But my father had called that morning, his voice soft and insistent. "You should go, Claire. Your mother would have wanted you there. Family is important." Family. I swallowed my bitterness and drove across town to Vanessa's rented duplex. The place looked almost festive from the street. Blue balloons tied to the railing, a folding table out front stacked with brightly wrapped gifts. Inside, though, I noticed the strain. Vanessa's friends huddled in the kitchen, whispering. My aunts lingered by the sliding door, their conversations halting whenever I walked past. I told myself it was just the awkwardness of grief. I found Caleb in the backyard, grinning under a paper crown, and handed him a gift bag. I'd barely had time to set down my purse when Vanessa's voice cut through the air. "Everyone, could I have your attention for just a minute?" She was standing near the picnic table, her hands clasped in front of her, a too bright smile plastered on her face. My parents were seated behind her, looking uneasy. I froze, some instinct telling me to brace for impact. "I've been keeping a secret," she began, her tone syrupy sincere. "And after Mom's passing, I think it's finally time to tell the truth." She glanced at me, eyes glittering. "Ethan isn't Claire's biological son. He's mine." The backyard fell silent. Someone gasped. My stomach lurched. Vanessa reached into her bag and pulled out a folded document. "This is Mom's updated will," she announced, holding it high. "It says that half of the coastal house now belongs to Caleb, because family should share what's rightfully theirs." Every gaze swung toward me. I felt the blood drain from my face. The words "updated will" echoed in my ears, but beneath my shock, something colder stirred. Because what Vanessa didn't know, what made me bite down on a laugh that would have sounded almost unhinged, was that her entire claim was not only cruel, but impossible. I drove home from the party in silence, the weight of what had just happened pressing against my chest like a heavy stone. The streets of Portland blurred past my windshield, but my mind was nowhere near the road. Vanessa's voice replayed in my head, each word sharpened to a blade. "To understand why she would stand in front of our family and claim my son as her own, you would have to know who Vanessa is, and who she's always been. We grew up in the same weathered Victorian on Munjoy Hill, but it always felt like we lived in different worlds. I was the studious one, the one who brought home perfect report cards and volunteered at the library. Vanessa, she was fire and smoke. Charismatic, restless, always moving toward the next thrill. Teachers called her spirited, but the truth was she had a knack for making messes and expecting someone else to clean them up. That someone was usually our mother. Mom adored us both, but she had a soft spot for Vanessa that went beyond fairness. Whenever Vanessa crashed a car, quit a job, or maxed out another credit card, Mom was there with a checkbook or an excuse. "She's just finding her way, Claire," Mom would say, as if I hadn't spent my 20s building my way brick by brick while Vanessa hopped from one half-finished plan to another. I used to think her resentment toward me was just sibling rivalry, but it deepened after my husband, Daniel, died suddenly. His life insurance and my careful savings allowed me to buy out a small architectural firm, a dream I had been working toward for years. Vanessa never said it outright, but I could see it in her eyes. She thought my stability was luck, not the product of a decade of sacrifice. Then came Ethan, the light in my life. The boy who gave me purpose when I thought my heart would stay hollow forever. And in Vanessa's mind, I think he became another item on her mental ledger. One more thing I had that she didn't. Over the years, her visits had grown more sporadic. Her questions about the coastal house more pointed. Mom's historic home was worth over $1 million now, perched above Casco Bay with the kind of view that realtors drooled over. I'd overheard Vanessa tell friends more than once that we'd all be set when Mom was gone. But never did I imagine she'd stoop so low as to drag my son into her greed. And yet, after that birthday party, I realized something chilling. She'd been laying the groundwork for this for a long time. I just hadn't wanted to see it. The night after the party, I sat in Ethan's room long after he had fallen asleep, watching the rise and fall of his small chest. His hair stuck out in soft tufts, his favorite stuffed dolphin tucked under one arm. 9 years old, and still every bit my little boy. Vanessa's words had been ugly, but they couldn't touch the truth. Because the truth wasn't just that she was lying, it was that her lie was impossible. 10 years ago, after years of infertility treatments and heartbreak, Daniel and I decided to adopt. It wasn't a second-best choice. The moment I held Ethan in the hospital nursery, I knew he was my son in every way that mattered. We finalized the adoption within months, his birth certificate carrying my name and Daniel's. Vanessa had been polite about it at the time, even bringing a gift, but I caught the glint of something sharper in her eyes. Curiosity, maybe envy. 2 years later, Daniel was diagnosed with a vascular condition that required delicate surgery. During the procedure, his doctor recommended a permanent step to protect his health, the medical equivalent of closing the chapter on ever having biological children. Daniel agreed. We told no one. Not my parents, not Vanessa, not even our closest friends. It was personal, private, and after everything we'd been through, we were content with our little family. Daniel never met a boundary he didn't honor, especially when it came to women making advances. Vanessa tested him more than once in ways that still made my stomach knot when I thought about them. A hand lingering too long on his arm, an accidental brush when she walked past. He always told me immediately. I believed him because I knew the kind of man I had married. Years before my mother's death, she had made her will official. The coastal house, every last cedar-shingled inch of it, would be mine. Not because she loved me more, but because she trusted me to maintain it. She said it out loud, right in front of Vanessa, who smiled and said she didn't care. I should have known she was filing it away like ammunition. After Daniel died, I had Harold Lane, the same lawyer who had handled my mother's estate, update my own documents to make sure Ethan's guardianship and inheritance were ironclad. Those papers were locked in my safe. So were Daniel's medical records, notarized and sealed. If Vanessa ever tried to question Ethan's place in my life, I could shut her down with a single page. And yet, as I sat there watching Ethan sleep, I realized this wasn't just about proving her wrong. This was about protecting my son from a narrative that could scar him for life. She thought she could twist our story to fill her pockets. She had no idea she was walking straight into a trap that had been set years before she even dreamed up this scheme. By Monday morning, my grief had hardened into something else. Focus. I called Harold Lane, my family's attorney for over 20 years, and asked for an urgent appointment. Harold's office was in a brick building downtown, with tall windows that looked out over the harbor. He rose from behind his desk when I walked in, his expression folding into sympathy. "Claire, I'm so sorry about your mother," he said, clasping my hand in both of his. "She was one of a kind." "She was," I agreed softly. Then I pulled the folded document from my bag and placed it on his desk. "And this is what my sister brought to Caleb's birthday party." Harold unfolded it carefully, adjusting his glasses. His brows furrowed as he read. "This language is wrong. All wrong," he murmured. "Not to mention this signature is a poor imitation of your mother's. Whoever did this doesn't understand legal phrasing or state requirements for a valid will. She claims it leaves half of the coastal house to her son Caleb," I said, my voice steady despite the heat rising in my chest. "And she's saying Ethan is actually her biological child, part of some imaginary arrangement we had." Harold looked up sharply. "Claire, is there any chance that—" "None," I cut in. "It's biologically impossible. And I have medical proof. Plus Ethan's legal adoption papers." Harold sat back, tapping the document against his desk. "This isn't just a family dispute. This is attempted fraud. Potential forgery. She could face serious criminal charges." I exhaled slowly. I don't want this to blow up in court unless I have to. But I do want to know why she's doing it, and how far she's prepared to go. "That," Harold said, "is where we bring in a professional. Someone who can look into her finances, her communications, her associates, discreetly. He reached for his phone. I know just the person. Lisa Grant. Former police detective, specializes in uncovering exactly this kind of thing. Within the hour, Lisa arrived. Tall, trim, her gray-streaked hair pulled into a no-nonsense ponytail. She listened without interrupting as I explained everything from the birthday party to my mother's actual will. People don't make moves like this unless they're under pressure, Lisa said when I finished. Financial, legal, or personal. I'll start with her debts, her rental situation, and the boy's father. If there's a motive, we'll find it. She slid a small notebook across Harold's desk. Write down every detail you can remember about her recent behavior, places she's been, things she's said, even if it seems insignificant. I nodded, already scribbling. Because if Vanessa thought she could rewrite my life, and my son's, I was going to make sure the truth hit harder than any lie she'd ever told. 3 days later, Lisa called. Her voice was crisp, businesslike. Claire, I've got what we need. Can you meet me at Harold's office this afternoon? When I walked in, Lisa and Harold were seated at the long mahogany conference table, a stack of folders between them. Lisa gestured for me to sit. I'll get right to it, she began, flipping open the first folder. Your sister is drowning. She's carrying just over $92,000 in debt, credit cards, personal loans, and a high-interest medical financing plan. She's 4 months behind on rent. Her landlord filed an eviction notice last week. She has until the end of the month to pay or vacate. Harold let out a low whistle. That would explain the sudden interest in the coastal house. Lisa nodded and opened another file. I pulled some of her text messages from a contact named Mara. Looks like a close friend. These are from 2 weeks before your mother's funeral. She slid the printouts toward me. My hands tightened as I read. Once Mom's gone, Claire won't be able to stop me. That house is worth over $1 million now. Half of it will be mine when I prove Ethan's really my kid. Mara, my friend Dave can fake the will. He can match Mom's signature easy. Claire's too emotional to question it right away. The air in the room felt heavier. I could almost hear my own pulse. Lisa's voice cut back in. And then there's Caleb's father, Marcus Hall. I ran his record. Multiple counts of fraud in 2 states, a suspended driver's license, and an active warrant in New Hampshire for failing to appear on a child support case for another child he abandoned. A cold wave passed through me. She's still letting him see Caleb? Lisa shook her head. From what I can tell, no. He's been out of the picture for months, but his history shows a pattern of using people financially and then vanishing. I'd be concerned about the influence he's had on her decision-making. Harold folded his hands. Claire, this isn't just reckless behavior. This is premeditated fraud aimed at you and your son. With the texts, the forged will, and her financial situation, you have enough to press charges tomorrow. I stared at the evidence spread across the table. My sister's words in black and white, proof of her planning to dismantle my life for her own gain. But alongside the anger was something else I hated to admit. Pity. Vanessa had always been her own worst enemy, but now she was willing to drag Ethan into her destruction. She's not going to see this coming, I said finally, closing the folder. But when I confront her, she'll have 2 choices. Walk back every lie, or watch the truth destroy her. I didn't give myself time to overthink it. The morning after Lisa's report, I called Vanessa. We need to talk, I said flatly. Come to my house tomorrow afternoon. Alone. Leave Caleb with a sitter. She hesitated. So, you're ready to be reasonable? I'm ready to end this, I replied. 2 o'clock. When the doorbell rang the next day, I had everything ready. 2 chairs facing each other in the living room, a small recorder on the coffee table, water glasses, and a neatly stacked folder. Vanessa stepped inside wearing a new dress, hair freshly done, eyes sharp with expectation. Nice setup, she said, glancing at the recorder. I want us both to have a record of what's said, I told her. That way there's no confusion later. She smirked. Fine by me. I pressed record, stating the date and time, and confirming she agreed to being recorded. Then I leaned back. Tell me exactly what you're claiming happened. She launched into her story, about how Ethan was really her biological son, that we had some informal surrogacy arrangement, that Mom wanted the coastal house split between us so Caleb and Ethan could both benefit. Her voice was practiced, smooth in the way of someone who'd told a lie so often, it started to feel like truth. When she finished, I didn't argue. I just opened the folder. "First," I said, sliding a set of papers across the table. "This is Ethan's legal adoption certificate, finalized 9 years ago. Your name is nowhere on it because you were never part of the process." Her lips thinned. "Paperwork can be—" "Next," I interrupted, laying down another document. "Daniel's medical records. 2 years after Ethan's adoption, he underwent a procedure making it physically impossible for him to father a child. His doctor is ready to testify." Vanessa blinked, color draining from her face. I set the legitimate, notarized will on top of the pile. "This is Mom's actual will, witnessed and filed with the court. Your version is a forgery. Badly done, according to Harold. Forging a will in this state is a felony punishable by up to 5 years in prison." Finally, I placed Lisa's printouts of her texts with Mara. "Here's you, in your own words, planning the fraud. And here's the PI's report on your debts, eviction notice, and Marcus Hall's record." Vanessa's bravado cracked. She slumped back, hands trembling. I didn't know what else to do," she said, voice breaking. "I'm out of options, Claire. Caleb and I are about to be homeless. Marcus left us with nothing. I thought, if I could get part of the house—" "You thought you could rewrite my son's life," I cut in, my tone cold, "and drag my mother's memory through the mud." Her eyes filled with tears. "I'm sorry. No," I said. "What? You're not sorry. Not yet, but you're going to be." I chose the setting carefully. My dining room, the same table where we'd celebrated birthdays and holidays before everything curdled. My father was already there when Vanessa arrived, his arms crossed, suspicion in his eyes. 2 aunts sat stiffly at the far end. Ethan was with a neighbor for the evening. The air felt heavy as everyone settled in. I set the recorder in the middle of the table. "Before we start," I said, "I want everyone to know this conversation is being recorded with all present consenting." My father frowned. "What's going on, Claire?" I turned to Vanessa. "Tell them." She froze for a moment, then drew a deep breath. "I lied," she said quietly. "About Ethan. He's not my son. I never had a surrogacy arrangement with Claire. And the will I showed at Caleb's party was fake. I had a friend forge it." The room erupted. Gasps, sharp intakes of breath. My father's face darkened. "Vanessa, do you have any idea what you've done? That's fraud. That's a felony." Her voice cracked. "I know. I was desperate. I'm buried in debt. I'm about to be evicted. I thought, if I could just get part of the house." "You thought you could rip apart your sister's life and your nephew's identity," one aunt snapped. I kept my voice steady. "I have enough evidence to press charges right now. Text messages, financial records, the forged will. If this goes to court, it won't end with a slap on the wrist." My father turned to me, his voice low. "Are you going to?" I met his gaze. "No, not if she follows my terms exactly." I laid them out clearly. 1, full public retraction of her claims about Ethan and the will, to every person she told. 2, therapy and financial counseling for at least 1 year, documented monthly. 3, steady employment within 60 days. 4, I would set up a trust fund for Caleb, covering education and medical needs so long as she stayed in compliance. 5, any breach, and I would immediately file criminal charges. Vanessa's eyes were wet but steady. "You'd do that for Caleb?" "Not for you," I said, "for him, because he didn't choose any of this." The silence that followed was thick, broken only by the soft tick of the wall clock. My father finally nodded. "Those are fair terms. You should take them." "I will," Vanessa said, her voice almost a whisper. The meeting ended without hugs or reassurances, just the scrape of chairs and the low murmur of my aunts talking on their way out. Vanessa paused at the door, her hand on the frame. "I am sorry, Claire, for all of it." I didn't answer. Not because I didn't hear her, but because I wasn't ready to decide if forgiveness was possible. 1 year later, the coastal air still carried the same salt and pine scent that wrapped around my childhood. I stood on the back deck of the beach house, coffee warm in my hands, watching Ethan toss a ball for the neighbor's golden retriever in the yard. His laughter rang clear, untouched by the ugliness of the past year. The trust fund for Caleb was up and running. The first payments had already covered his speech therapy and school tuition. Vanessa kept her side of the deal: therapy twice a month, financial counseling once a month, and a steady job as a receptionist at a local dental office. She sent me proof without me having to ask. It wasn't friendship between us now, but it was steady and civil. The biggest change was in Caleb. When I saw him, at park outings, birthday lunches, or when Vanessa brought him to the house, he seemed lighter. Whatever chaos had once clung to my sister's life was loosening. My parents had needed time to adjust to the new boundaries. My father came around quickly, seeing how structure actually gave Vanessa a chance to stand on her own. My mother struggled more, but even she began to admit that shielding Vanessa from consequences had never truly helped her. The business I'd built was thriving. I'd hired 2 new designers and finally taken the leap to open a small showroom in town. On the anniversary of my mother's death, I established the Margaret Donovan Scholarship for students pursuing architecture from rural Maine communities. It felt right, like turning something painful into something that would keep building long after I was gone. There were still moments when grief slipped in, unexpected. Packing up boxes from my mother's sewing room, I found a photo of Vanessa and me from when we were kids. Both of us in sun hats, holding hands, our hair tangled from the wind. I kept it, because no matter what had happened, she was still my sister. But I'd learned something I wished I'd understood years earlier. Being family doesn't mean accepting harm. Boundaries aren't walls to shut people out. They're fences to keep the right things in and the wrong things out. Ethan ran up to the deck, cheeks flushed. "Your turn to throw, Mom." I smiled, setting down my coffee. "Coming." As we played, I thought about how close I'd come to losing more than just a house. I could have lost my son's sense of security, my peace of mind, even my faith in myself. And how the only reason I hadn't was because I was prepared, and I stood firm. Sometimes protecting the people you love means saying no, and meaning it. And if there's one thing this past year taught me, it's that love and boundaries can, and must, exist together.